Good day, YouTubers, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls from all around the world. We're back on the sales. We got one of them done, and the last one we're going to do today. I got to look in the plans and see about these two. I'm not sure where they're going to go. Maybe down. But anyway, yesterday we installed the main mast topsail. Got all the running rigging done on that. So we starting point here. We go up to the lanyards and then down. I got to cut these tails off right here. And everything goes down to a baling pin. We got these two on the very top. So that's 2 down to a lanyard pin. And these 2 is 4 down to a lanyard pin. And then these 2 go down to a lanyard pin. And then the corners of the sail go up, start up here and go down, up, down to a lanyard pin. So there's 8 going down to lanyard pins. As you can see, I got them all tied off down here, but I haven't cut any of the tails off yet. I'm glad I left these things loose till later on, because it's a lot easier to get in there and do the ties on these lanyard pins. Baling pins, what am I saying, lanyard? Baling pins. So if you leave those loose and don't mount them on the deck until you get done with all the running rigging, it's a lot easier to tie them running rigging lines in there. Another thing I noticed that made the job a little easier is, instead of starting with one of your running rigging lines where it ties off at, like this one ties off here and goes down, up, another block, and then down to the pin. If you do it in reverse and start with your running rigging line off of the spool and bring it up through here and fish it up through the crow's nest, grab it, bring it up to the next crow's nest using a pair of tweezers to poke it through, and then another pair of tweezers to grab it, then bring it on up and feed it through the pulleys, and then tie it off at its ending tie point. It's a lot easier than trying to fish the running rigging lines down after you run all the blocks up on top. And then after you get that point tied off, you can take your line that's coming off of the spool and cut it with extra length and put a counterweight on it so that you can get 2 or 3 of them down ready to tie off and have counterweights laying on them, and you can adjust the position of the sail up and down and right and left with the tension down here, and then tie them off one at a time down here. And it seemed to be easier than starting at the top and coming down. I went from the bottom and went up because it was easier to feed from below. It was easier to feed through that mess in the crow's nest. You can see all them lines in there. There's like 6 or 8 lines right now coming up through that crow's nest. It's really hard to see them when you're trying to fish them down into the area below here, but it's easier to see the rope and grab it with a second pair of tweezers as you come up instead of going down. So that's one little trick I did discover after we got almost all the sails done, so we'll do that on this last one. So I'm going to set up for some lines off of the spool, get them ready. We'll do these top two first to these blocks here. I started a tie point at that eye bolt, but we won't start there. We'll end there. That'll be the place we tie off our line after we bring it up and feed it through all the blocks. Then we'll tie it off here, and then the tail that's still hooked to the reel with a spool. All my spools are over there. And we'll cut extra length so we got room to tie it off down below. So I'm going to look in the plans and see where those first two tie off at and get them up there. Alright, rinse and repeat again, but this time we're in regular video filming. To get this up through there, grab it. Gonna come up and go through this block here. So we got one on each side. These little things here are a lifesaver. Just get your running rigging line in there. Position of your block. Want to come up through the back. Then simply just pull it through. And oh, what am I doing? Yeah, I gotta go to that one, but I don't know where the other end goes. The bottom part's gonna go to a baling pin. I wasn't prepared for this. Let me look at the plans. Yeah, it goes down here to the tail of the sail. In the sail prep photograph, it showed them blocks hanging down, so when you set them with the glue and everything, it was hanging down, but it really wanted it to be up. And then this is going to tie off up here. So So we take that back off, put it in the deck so we don't lose it. And then we gotta fish this around the yard arm. We'll do that one next. I want to get these two done here. You got to really look at the photographs closely to make sure. It does show you a starting point and an ending point, and then it numbers the points in between from one as starting point. So it would go 1, 2, 3 through the crow's nest and down to a baleen pin 4, tie it off. So this one we just ran up. That lifts the tail of the sail. So we cut it with enough to tie it off on the baling pin, and do the same thing on the other side. Get behind that shroud and come up through the crow's nest and grab it. And go behind this shroud. Put our little tool on there. Makes it a lot easier to fish through these blocks. I'm just looking at the orientation of the block compared to how I want the rope to go in and out. Go in that side and come out over here, and go down to this block. And go up and tie off. And then take this thing back off. Put it over here so we don't lose it. Get that out of the way. We're going to be doing those next. How to get that through there without messing up the threads on the sail. And do a double granny knot. Making sure you don't let that first one come loose. There's our thread at here. There's so many, you gotta really be careful. Okay. Now the bottom of these are going to go down here and over. We'll do them last. Let's get a drop of glue on that knot. Cut the tail. And then the other end that ties off on the baling pin is laying here. We're going to cut that. We'll do all the baling pins at the same time when we get done running all these. So now we got 4 of them down there through the baling pin racks. These 2 here and these 2 we just did. Now we got to do these 2 here. And pre-tied a couple blocks on this gaff. So I look at our plans and I see the starting point, wherever that is, from here to here, and then I think down. Let me look at the plans and see where we start at. Okay, now we're going to tie off these. I'm looking at the plans. I'm understanding which running rigging line needs to go first over here. And this one is pulling down on that tail of the sail because I want to tie the pressure on that before I pull up on the sail, because do the pulling up will make it furl up. I'm looking for a different tweezer here. Because I want to get around that twice. Like that. Okay, I got around it twice. It's hooked on the bottom. Now I'm going to take my little grabber tweezers, and that camera is right in the way for my right hand. That ain't gonna work. There. So that's got a grip on the slack where it was wrapped around that twice. And now I want to make a simple loop like that. And I'm going to reach in from the other side, turn that loop upside down, put it over the baling pin, and pull it tight. Pull those out. Don't let them fall on your foot. And then while I'm holding pressure on that, a little dab of super glue on that line. So what that one does is come up here and go through these two blocks on this yard arm we don't have a sail on. And that's the way it comes in the kit. No sail for that yard arm. But then it goes up and ties off on the corner of this sail we just did today, holding it down. And I've got a little piece of skewer, little piece of wood skewer in there, clamped on both ends, so I can make sure that the tension on these lines on both sides and the tension that we're just now pulling is going to be the right amount and to keep everything straight. So now I want to do that same line over here on this side, and this one is the one that's pulling up on the sail, which we don't want right now. We want to pull down on it. Which is this one here. So put that one out of the way. Get this one here first. The counterweights on some of these lines will help keep them organized while you work on the process of elimination. And the plans show for all of these getting tied off on this one baling pin rack. Just keep going out until you get a fill. I don't think it's going to fill them up. There'll be some other ropes later on for something else. So you see how I get in there with them reverse tweezers. And clamp that tail after we got the tension that we want. Then make a loop. Turn that loop upside down. Carefully pull that slack out. And glue it. Then I'll let that glue dry a little while before I cut that tail, because with tension on that line and you cutting the tail before the glue's dry, it may, especially if you pumping a rope somewhere, it may pull it off, and then you got to run a whole new line. So that's 2 out of 8. So we got one here, which is for pulling up. We just did the one pulling down, so we can do that one next. And then we got the top 2 up here, and then we got these 2 here. So we'll move on to the next 4 or 6. Okay, so we got them all tied off on all sides. That's the end of the sails. I'm gonna figure out how I can get in here. Got a whole bunch of little loops of rope to make for these though. So, sails are done. Now I'm looking in the prints, what is next? We got all the sails done. And it's cannons, guns, and what we got to do to get them in the gun port. So there is some dead wood back in there behind these holes. Let me just stick a skewer. This one's broken. A skewer in there. So I'm going to measure these because they're saying 25 millimeters, which these are a little longer than what I have on my finger, which is good because you got to put the cannon, the head of it, it's going to simulate the cannon. Got to jam it in that wood and glue it on there. But we want to hit that hole inside. We've got to drill a hole in there in the boat and have these sticking out the right amount. So I'm going to remeasure to make sure that they are going to stick out the right amount, because when I drill a hole in that dead wood behind the opening, I want the head of that cannon to stick out of the hole a little bit. And if the wood dowel goes too far in there after I drill a hole in there, the cannon will be recessed too far. So I may want to make these a little extra longer, so I got some play in that hole inside the ship to adjust and be able to hold the cannon straight. So we got to make 62 of these and paint them black. So I'll drill holes in this board for painting purposes maybe. And then we got 28 of these using these brass rods for these other cannons. I'm going to use some E8000 to glue them on there, because the hole on these goes all the way through, and we don't want that brass rod sticking out the mouth of the cannon. So that'll be a little tedious. Some of them got to get cleaned up some. And then 62 of these to make up and paint. And then drill the holes to be a tight fit inside there. Let me use a pair of tweezers here. Yeah, I just hit the wall. So yeah, if I drill a hole, I should be able to use this 25mm measurement for these. Just as long as my hole is a nice tight fit, and that'll keep the cannon in the center of the opening. I think the round ones get the smaller cannons or whatever, the ones with the brass rod in them. So we got a lot of tedious cannon work to do to prep for installing these and get them painted black. We'll paint the shaft black too a little ways down. That's why I'm going to use this board. That'll work, because I don't need to paint the bottom part. That's going to go into that plate inside the ship, so we don't want paint on that end anyway. Just enough black paint down that way so you don't see any light colors in the opening of the hull. And do the same on these, 28 times there and 62 times there. So we got to cut 62 dowels out of our dowel stock here. And get those shaped on the end so they'll jam into the cannon. And I was sanding a little bit on the edge so it's not so rounded, and then I'll take it, once I get it started like that, and I'll stand it up and smack it with a hammer and get it down in there all the way. I won't have to glue those, I don't think, because it's a tight fit, but these I'll have to glue every one of them because that rod goes all the way through the cannon. We'll let that E8000 dry. Make sure that glue's going to work. That's what we got for next week. That was my breakfast time bell. Thanks for watching.